The EVGA tribute wall. You guys have seen this in the background. It's got some of my favorite Kingpin GPUs that I've been collecting. But if all the rumors about EVGA going out of business are true, I better hurry up with the tribute build here. It's going to turn into a memorial. The LandCool 216 mid-tower case from Lee & Lee offers a host of premium features without the premium price tag. Modular motherboard placements allow for either a higher or lower position to accommodate optimal air cooler and water cooling configurations, ensuring the most room possible. And the pre-installed dual 160mm front fans and 140mm exhaust PWM fans provide great airflow due to the continuous mesh design in order to keep higher power components as cool as possible. Available in white or black, RGB and non-RGB versions, and starting at $99, the LandCool 216 from Lee & Lee provides great value alongside its great feature set. To learn more, follow the sponsored link in the description below. You guys haven't? Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, this is the EVGA Not a 4090. You guys remember this, right? Got our hands on one of only a handful that were made for engineering purposes. For all its intents and purposes, it works. It's never received another BIOS update or anything. This is gonna actually be my test, not my test rig, but my desktop for work. Taking a real risk by putting an EVGA card in here that's not gonna have any support behind it. But anyway, this is the E1. This is their carbon fiber chassis that's all hanging by wires under tension and stuff. I've done a few videos on this already, and a lot of you have been like, what the hell happened to that build? It's not just the typical J slow and doesn't apparently work quickly on builds. It's the fact that I have a 13900K that's direct eye cooled under this gold block that EK had sent me. And now I need to do temperature testing because apparently it's come to light that these have a concave to them that's causing problems with direct eye and not cooling as well as it should. So at least I got another block that's a non-direct eye. If it ends up not working right, then I can just throw another 13900 in here with that and then deal with the direct eye and something else. But anyway, moving on, it's got the EVGA Z790 Dark motherboard, which is a Kingpin product. It's got all the gold on there, which is why I think the gold goes really well. It's also coupled with the Singularity Computers power board, which is why you see these nice short cables here that are very pretty and are gonna be the neatest cable management that you can possibly imagine. In fact, the graphics card is even connected right now to power, and you guys probably didn't even notice it because I'm using the gold a 180-degree cable mod power adapter, which I'm going to be changing out with their new one that they've got coming out, their version 1.1. But as you can see right here, I've got a cable mod cable behind there that even has gold metal sleeves on there. And that's just an accident because this is actually the cable that came off of my build at home when Cable Mod first sent us their replacement cables. It just had gold combs on there and they were the only black cables that they sent me. So I just slid all the combs out of the way so they weren't visible. So when I was digging through my pile of stuff, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And anyway, because I've got the 180 cable adapter here, it goes behind the graphics card, hiding the cable, through this opening on the bottom down here, as you can see, like through the distro plate slash pump block power board thing Singularity came up with and sent me. But if we look at the back, the length of it was perfect to terminate right into the GPU, or not the GPU, but the power supply. This power supply messes with my head a little bit. It's a 1000-watt platinum power supply, but it's so tiny. It's a regular bitty size. This silver shroud right here really bugs me, but I can just unscrew that and paint it black or gold if I really want to. But anyway, this is the back side of the power board because the power boards are they're really awesome. This is something Singularity Computers has been making now for a lot of different cases. You can get it for the 011 Dynamic. You can get it for Siemens XT cases, I think. Some Corsair 5000 series and 7000 series cases. Obviously they made one for this because one of the things that makes an open chassis like this really difficult to work with is hiding cables and stuff. So when most of them are built into the board, it means I can do stuff like this with my leftover cables here. So I will not be using the Lee & Lee distribution like power block for these. I will be using my JST converter that takes this from a JST to the 3-pin header that matches the motherboards. And then I will just be connecting these to the power board. So the power board and then the motherboard lighting stuff can control the lighting. Now the lighting on this is very basic. The EVGA did not spend a lot of time on motherboard lighting software and stuff, and it's gonna have to be done through Precision. But because it's an all EVGA build, that makes sense because Precision is an EVGA product and I can control the GPU and any other lighting through Precision. And then what I'll be able to do is just kind of like zip tie these wires down like along the cables and stuff to sort of hide them. So realistically, the only wires that are gonna be visible in this build at all is where these show like along there. If you've ever seen one of these builds that don't have a distribution block, they are just everywhere. D5 pump down here. This is just the cover for it. I've got the D5 right here. Now I don't wanna have to have a SATA plug in than this and it's all balled up back here. So I'm gonna actually cut this wire. I'm gonna obviously make a note as to which is positive, which is negative. I'm gonna put terminal ends on there. I'm gonna take one of the SATA plugs from the power supply that I'm not using, terminate it on there so that it can just be the right length to plug right into the power supply. But I wanted to really lean into the black and gold, which was really the EVGA / Kingpin sort of a design. And you might notice I am using soft tubing for this. Remember, these are so flashy, I love this. So I'm gonna replace this black one down here. Because of the carbon fiber, it has this very F1 automotive-y kind of a look and theme to it. So this is the black tubing that I'm using. It's from EK. It's a 10 by 16 millimeters, so obviously it fits everything here. So you can get an idea now of what the black and the gold are gonna look like on there. And then I have 90-degree adapters and extensions and stuff where needed. So this is a fairly simple build to do because of the fact that the loop order, which I've already figured out, is very straightforward. So loop order goes out of the D5 down here. Out here, it's gonna go into this radiator, so I have to connect from there to there, through the rad and back down. It's then gonna come out of here, but I'll have a 90-degree that brings the fitting up, and we're gonna come up and across to here, and I'm not entirely sure which is in and out. The EVGA board, you might notice, is turned 90 degrees. And the reason why they did this is it allowed them to get the 24-pin power and the EPS power next to each other. And then it got the RAM really close to the CPU, and it was a trace reason. It was just because these boards were built for like world record overclocking, the length of the traces, the crosstalk, you know, all that sort of stuff, the location of traces was very important. So they rotated the whole CPU socket to the left 90 degrees. So that's why the RAM is up here. Anyway, out of here into the radiator up there, out of the radiator into right here, and then this will fill up, right? I got a drain down here, I've got a fill up here. This will fill up and then feed the pump again. So we just got this kind of a circular loop going. The only other thing I haven't done is I have not put my drives in here. And I'm gonna do something which is definitely a do as I say, not as I do. I will be taking the drives out of my current system and then just plopping them in this system. Now what I'm gonna be doing is I have some weird finicky stuff going on with my computer right now with like just random errors here and there, and I might be transferring those errors to this computer. If it ends up happening, then I can just wipe those drives on this computer, reinstall and be up and running. But I just don't want to reset up all of my network drives and the access to that and get all the, you guys know what a pain it is to install. When you've been working on a computer every single day and then have to start over from scratch, it just sucks. So I will be transferring the drives over to this. I have 2 NVMEs. Anyway, let's get the loop put together. So at least the fittings and the orders and the tubes and stuff. Soft tubing, it's easy because you're not gonna cut anything. Well, you do have to cut it, but you don't have to do any sort of trimming or heating or bending. And I really do think the rubber tubing for the automotive type of theme really works. So this is what the back of the direct die looks like, and we went ahead and paused the montage here because I decided I'm gonna flip the block over because the inlet was on the opposite side and I don't want to have tubes crossing. So I was like, I just 90-degree flip it now, which will also give me an opportunity to see what the thermal paste spread looked like on the direct die, because that is the concern. People have written me saying apparently this has come up. Anyway, moving on, I've just undone these screws. This is captive by these 4 screws because this is also now the back of the socket, because there's our old socket right there. Remember, direct die, we removed the socket itself, the socket retention system, and it plopped off. So now, I mean, it does look like it's got a little bit of a circular pattern where maybe there's some parts of it that were not being compressed fully. And that is something that came up. Yeah, it definitely looks like there's a parts of the die that are not being fully squished. I think I'm going to stop right here for a moment in the video and I'm gonna do a little research. as to what people have been doing about this. Corsair brings gaming to the next level with the Xeneon 45-inch flexible OLED Xeneon Flex display. With up to 240 Hz refresh rate, 0.03 millisecond gray-to-gray response time, motion blur canceling, anti-reflective coating, burn-in protection, and customizable bend based on user's preference, the Xeneon Flex from Corsair allows gamers to truly tailor their display to their liking. Click the link below for more details. So, perusing Reddit, it was not hard to find people saying that the EK water block direct eye is defective. Actually, what's defective is this plate right here. So as you can see, that squishes that plate and that plate together to hold the CPU down. Now that plate is also responsible for allowing the direct eye portion of the cold plate to mate with the CPU. Now the problem is, apparently this plate is about 5 thousandths too tall. The other thing that people have said is that it's apparently uneven. I can't tell if they were saying this is uneven or the cold plate is uneven, making it sit slightly crooked, which is leading to hot spots on the die. So I'm gonna do the right thing, as my friend Derek would say, and just put the stock stuff back on. Now here's the problem. This is the real 24 karat block. This is really 24 karat gold plated on here. And I suspected this might be the issue. I suspected I might have an issue with this. So I did think ahead and ordered another block. Now this is not, the picture does not represent what's in here. This is the gold, this is a gold block. It is not the gold block, it is a gold block. And my issue with this block is the fact that it looks different. So this one is just a basic block that would match the rest of the build, but I don't think that this is as attractive as that. I mean, because that's real gold on the left. But what I can do is I can just swap the cold plate off of this one, or the regular one, onto the 24 karat gold one, and then use that. This problem was so anticipated. I bought this 13900K from Amazon a few weeks back.
Just in case?
Just in case, because I don't have another one, like an OEM one. So I bought this just in case, which means I now have a 13900K direct die sitting here that's useless until I get a different water block in from another brand, because apparently there's some other brands. I think Ice Wave is what one of them's called or whatever. I am gonna be buying a tabletop CNC printer. Not CNC printer, but CNC machine, because I'm tired of having to have other people make stuff for me. I wanna learn how to do it myself. And this could be one of the first projects that we utilize it with, which is to shave down that bracket. Okay. So, now I just gotta put the socket and everything back in the motherboard and swap that all around, and we're not gonna bore you guys with that. All right, so the loop is together. As you can see, I've got all the gold fittings in here, which look great. Converted the direct eye block top over to the standard top. And I got all my gold 90s and stuff in here. But yeah, I think it turned out great. I got my drain down here. So this is one of the EK drains where you put your tube and fitting in there to drain, and you just pull that out and then it starts to flow. When you're done, you push it back. Let's talk about this. So you guys may have seen in the montage, I was struggling with trying to connect this part of the radiator to the return, which is very close. Now I was able to get a piece of tubing in there. The problem was being able to get the piece of tubing in there and both, and this is not even on there fully tight, like a little pro tip, when you use soft tubing like this, sometimes getting the compression down is very hard, but over time, as you run it and it gets warm, it'll get softer. So always go back and check those and you can tighten them up more over time. That's also why the heat gun was here, because I use it to soften up the rubber so that, especially with this type of tubing, so that it'll slip over the barb a little easier. Trust me, the compression, this is not responsible at all. The collar is not responsible for leaking or not leaking. It's responsible for the tube coming off. These tubes will never pop off because of the double barb and well, it's single barb, but it's such a big barb. It's not coming off. I could not get a tube in here without it being so tight that it was putting too much pressure on the acrylic right here, and it was actually bent a little, and I just did not trust the acrylic being responsible for holding that level of tension. So I decided to run a tube all the way down to the bottom, which technically that was for a drain, but the drain on the other side will do the same job. So this essentially makes this entire portion, I'm not gonna say useless. It's useless as a return, quote, distro block, but it's still very useful for feeding the pump during my filling process. So it still has use, it's just, this looks kind of funny, but although it's behind, it's not bad. Before I move forward and deal with wiring or any of that crap, I want to pressure test the loop with my pressure tester right here, which is just kind of like a little mini bike pump that has a gauge on it that instead of a Schrader valve, it goes to a G-quarter. Then what I can do is I can still do what I want to do with the terminal on this end to plug directly into the power supply while it's still put together. Okay, I've got it perfectly aligned at the very top of the green. Now we wait. We don't have to wait long. I saw some comments that when I said waiting 10 or 15 minutes is enough, they're like, no, because it could be a super slow leak. There is a very low volume inside this loop. There is not much volume at all. So if there was a leak, you would see it almost immediately. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a few minutes, and then as long as that needle doesn't move, we can move forward with getting our wiring up, and then hopefully a test boot today. So it's holding at the top of the green, which is, I don't know, like 0.65 bar or something like that. So I'm gonna call it good. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna close it off. I don't know why, I just love hearing a computer release air and sound like a freaking tire. It's a weird sound. It's just, I don't know, it's satisfying to me. Anyway, it holds air, it holds water. Do you know why? Because they're both fluids. Anyway, moving forward, we can do this, and I'm gonna zip tie these together now. That way when I put my gauges back up, they're just gonna kind of be up here and sort of out of the way. And the nice thing is the graphics card is gonna cover a lot of this. So I need to, and I think the priority for the cable management would be this part right here. That way it's not like, you know, which would look dumb. All right, so there's a little harness that I made. And I guess if I were really leaning into the automotive theme, I could have put a loom on there, but that's okay. I also forgot I have to do the front side USB-C, which means I should have done this at the same time so I could have zip tied them all together. Okay, so as you can see, this is what I came up with. I've got nice tight off of the USB-C, down through here, up under, and then it's just the right tension so that when I fold it back, they stay together, it's out of the way. When the graphics card is here, it's gonna cover all of this. What I have not done though, is a test boot of this motherboard and this CPU and everything out of put together. But to be honest, I'm not that concerned about it because, well, I'm just hoping, okay? So looking at the schematic, it should be PSU side on the EVGA power supply pinned down. The middle of the bottom three right here should be 12 volts. This should be ground. Then the top is another ground, the 3 volt and the 5 volt, 3.3 and 5 volt. There we go. I did a thing! Okay, let's do the next one. I know I'm surprised, I've done this a million times. It's not on camera for you guys in a long time. All right, so like I said, that should be it right there. That's the sound of steel on ceramic. That's why you never run your pumps dry. Do you know what this means? It's time to fill it. Well, it's up and running. As you can see, I got all of the software loaded. I needed to install EVGA E1 control to make the gauges work. So this gauge on the right, as far as I can tell, is motherboard temp. This is obviously CPU package temp. This is obviously GPU core temp. The GPU fans are in 0 RPM mode, so that's obviously a little bit warmer. Have to run a special version of PX1 to make the 4090 work properly. Otherwise, what I get is the VRM fan running 100% at all times. And then the EVGA Elite X1 software is for the motherboard, so I can get the RGB headers to do what I want, which is now just set to static white. So as you can see, they look really good. I also did a little dirty overclock on my, so if you guys didn't see my XTU video, this is a quick and easy way to both undervolt and overclock your CPU. So I got a 40,164 on my 13900K here by just doing an undervolt of 105 millivolts, upping the E-cores from 4.3 to 4.5, and then the performance core ratio, all core, is at 56. Technically, I'm limiting the single core up to down to 5.6 as well, where I think 5.8 is where it goes by default. I've explained before, I don't like doing per core overclocking, so I just left it at all core like this. So I was at minus 100 for this. I'm gonna go minus 105 just to play with it a little bit. I'll show you the temps. We hit 87 to 88 C on the core, which is funny when factory 5.5 and 5.3 was hitting 100 C without undervolting. Undervolting is absolutely necessary. I also want to point out this Z790 Dark motherboard is also on the launch BIOS. I have not updated the BIOS, so it might be better than where it is out of the box. I'll play with that later. Anyway, we can show you the temperatures and stuff right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just run the multi-core test. Watch the CPU. This is so neat. It's like a car right now. So it's at 83 C, 341 watts on the package draw TDP. 340 watts, that is nuts. So are we gonna hit 40 still? 39,349. That happens here and there. I've also got that score with all the background stuff going. So now by closing off all that stuff, will I go back up to 40K or 40,000, even though I now have given it even less voltage? 40,657, so I gained 500 points from the first one, right? And I cooled it off by 15 degrees. Actually, I picked up 2,500 points and cooled it off 15 degrees. So anyway, okay, last thing I want to see here is the GPU, because, you know, GPU stuff. Come on, I want you to hit 3,000, dang it. I'm not sure that this card will, if you want to know the truth. I don't think it did in my previous testing. There's 3,000 on the dot. At 3,000 megahertz, with the fans locked at 73%, the GPU is still at 45 degrees. 46. Oh, we're artifacting a little bit. Okay, back it off, back it off. You have to remember too, this card never got, see, I just backed it off to 2970 and it's fine. It never got any refinement. There was only 20 of them that were ever made for engineering purposes. This is why the tribute build was important to me. This right here was the entire reason it took me 6 months to get this done. Like I said at the start of this video, I don't know if they're going out of business. They're just rumors. People have been talking about it. Linus talked about it. Steve talked about it. It's just all speculation because of some things that were said about the motherboard team is going to apparently no longer exist and make motherboards. I think EVGA might turn into a peripheral and power supply only company, which would be some severe downsizing. So everything you see here with the motherboard and the graphics card and the case and all this will be impossible. In fact, it's all pretty much at this point impossible to get. Everything shows out of stock, even their power supplies. Whatever. Thanks for watching, guys. The EVGA tribute build is done. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed finally finishing it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.